Edition coming to you live from our studio here at Adesanwe Kanda in Accra. I am Martin Asiedu-Dartey. Coming up this evening, President John Mahama orders immediate termination of all government contracts with Strategic Mobilization Ghana Limited following findings by the Special Prosecutor as SML rejects the allegations, defending its record as transparent, lawful and beneficial to the state. We'll dig into the specifics for you in a jiffy. Later, Minister for Lands and Natural Resources lays new legislative instrument in Parliament to repeal the controversial L.I.2462, which permitted the mining in forest reserves. And by the time we bring this bulletin to a close, we'll take you to Parliament, where pressure is mounting on Speaker Alban Bagbin to release findings of a 7-member committee that investigated chaotic scenes during the January 30 ministerial vetting. 9 months on, the report remains before Parliament without debate. Details of all of these and more, but before that, let's bring you the news summaries with Aisha Yakubu Khalid.
In news summaries this evening, Mrs. Anita Owusu-Kufuor, the Eastern Regional Manager of the Food and Drugs Authority, has called for an immediate ban on the locally made cooking pots, popularly known as dadising. She cited the detection of dangerous levels of lead in their production, warning that the contamination posed serious health risks to consumers. Mrs. Owusu-Kufuor made the call during a stakeholder engagement on heavy metal contamination in cereal legume mixes held in Somenya in the Yilo Krobo municipality of the Eastern region. The cabinet has approved that an initial 100 million cedis should be released to purchase surplus food from farmers across the country. The Deputy Chief Executive of the National Food Buffer Stock Company, Osmond Amoa, has said the funding, he said, forms part of the government's plan to mop up excess produce, prevent post-harvest losses and build a national food reserve to enhance food security. Also, President John Dramani Mahama has ordered the immediate termination of all contracts between the government of Ghana and the Strategic Mobilization Ghana Limited. The directive follows the conclusion of an investigation by the Office of the Special Prosecutor into revenue assurance between agreements between SML and the Ghana Revenue Authority. Also, the minority in Parliament is demanding clarity on the sources of funding for the operations of the Ghana Gold Board. The caucus says although the government previously announced an allocation of $279 million to kickstart the board's activities, a right to information request reveals that the Ministry of Finance has not made any financial releases to the board since its establishment. This, they argue, raises serious concerns or questions about how the institution is currently being financed. And that's all for the summaries this evening, Martin.
Thank you very much, Aisha, for the summaries. Let's go into the specifics now. And President John Mahama has ordered the immediate termination of all contracts between the government of Ghana and Strategic Mobilization Ghana Limited, SML. The directive follows the conclusion of an investigation by the Office of the Special Prosecutor into revenue assurance agreements between SML and the Ghana Revenue Authority. In a letter signed by the Secretary to the President, Dr. Callistus Mahama, and addressed to the Minister for Finance, Dr. Kesalato Forson, the President instructed that immediate steps be taken to end all existing agreements involving SML. The OSP's investigation, led by Special Prosecutor Kisei Jabing, uncovered alleged procurement breaches, contractual overreach, and questions over value for money. Mr. Jabing said that the probe found no genuine need for SML's engagement, describing the contracts as products of self-serving official patronage and promotion based on false and unverified claims. Meanwhile, SML has rejected the allegations by the Office of the Special Prosecutor suggesting irregularities and underperformance in its revenue assurance contracts with the Ghana Revenue Authority. In a statement issued today, the SML said it had fully cooperated with all investigations and urged that public discussions be based on verified facts rather than speculation. Let's now give you the full details of what is contained in that rejection letter, more or less, that we have received from Strategic Mobilization Ghana Limited, SML. Joining me in studio is the birthday boy, Dennis Pwaberi Wedam Esquire, to help us understand the specifics of what is contained in the letter by SML. Dennis, good evening. Thank you for your time and happy birthday to you, man.
Thank you, Martin, and a pleasure being here, Martin.
Right. So, So we know the backstory, and as early as yesterday, the Special Prosecutor gave us further details of business deals that we were expected to have had between the Ghana Revenue Authority and SML. And the bottom line of what the OSP said was that there were irregularities, monies have been paid and should be recovered, etc. SML is seeking to give their side of the story. What is contained in their statement?
Precisely so. So SML is fighting back strongly because they are under fire for this particular contract between themselves and the Ghana Revenue Authority in respect of what has become known as revenue assurance contract. Now, SML is specifically responding to the comments that were made by the Special Prosecutor yesterday, where he had made certain allegations and insinuations and also giving indication on how they were progressing into the future. But SML says that they've issued a statement dated today, and it is titled, SML, Facts, Not Rhetoric, Should Shape Ghana's Revenue Debates. Now, they go on to say what, according to them, is a clarification of the matter, starting off by quoting what their lead counsel had said by indicating, and quote, that we will present all relevant documents before the appropriate authorities. We remain proud of the work done, the controls that govern it, and the measurable value created for Ghana. Now, beyond that, they've gone on to specifically respond to some of the issues that were raised, including, one, the ownership and independence of the company SML, because there were insinuations that there are some faces behind the company, and those faces are politically exposed or former government appointees. They respond to that point by saying that SML is a wholly Ghanaian-owned company, private company, that it's duly incorporated under the laws of the Republic of Ghana. Its directors, shareholders, and beneficial owners are publicly registered with the Register of Companies. No current or former public official owns, controls, or patronizes SML. Assertions suggesting political or public office ownership are inconsistent with the corporate records. You do recall that the SP had indicated that Ken Oforiatta is the mastermind behind SML. This, in part, responds to that particular statement that was made by the Special Prosecutor. It also talks about the scope and the nature of the services by detailing exactly what they were doing, which part of the contract was executed, which part of it was pending, for which there still exists a contract, which we are now learning that the President has ordered that that part of the contract, which is still pending, be terminated. So they also go on to now talk about performance and verification. The larger part of the conversation has always been that SML was paid for no work done. They're arguing strongly that for every money that they received, there is performance and verification for which they were paid. So in part, they say all payments were tied to verified deliverables and measurable outputs, that oversight mechanisms including technical validation, data and report reconciliation, and documentary confirmation before any payment was made. So that is in respect of the allegation or the claim that they received money for no work done. You also recall, Martin, that on paragraph 250 of the OSP statement, he did indicate, and for the purposes of clarity, let me just quote part of what the OSP said so that we can put the response in proper perspective. OSP says, further, the OSP can neither choose nor recommend contractual partners for public institutions. Therefore, if in the estimation of the Ministry of Health and the Ghana Revenue Authority, they are desirous of retaining SML in other areas of revenue assurances, then critical needs assessment should be done. It goes on and on. In essence, saying that, yes, you can continue to do business with SML. However, in doing so, you need to comply with certain things that they had not complied with in this particular one. Now, in respect of some monies that were supposed to be recovered, the Attorney General said, sorry, not Attorney General, the Special Prosecutor says they were going to recover some 125 million from SML because that money was unearned money. SML responds in their point 4 by saying that SML questions the basis of the reported 125 million to be recovered by the state, as evidence on record clearly indicates otherwise. In fact, now Martin, listen. In fact, the state owes SML
Okay.
OSP says they are going after SML to recover some 125 million.
Yes.
SML says that, in fact, the state owes SML. That official statements on verified performance and data and financial reconciliation are available directly from the GRA. So they are also making a counterclaim that instead of you wanting to take some 125 million, we are of the view that you are the one who owes us. They're talking about payment systems and invoices. They've addressed that components, and also confirmation of the contracting authority. They say the GRA confirmed in writing that SML performed in accordance with agreed targets. And if you recall, somewhere earlier this week, there was some publication from the GRA indicating that SML did indeed perform parts of the contract that they had with them. So this is what they are referring to. And that audit trails, reconciliation records, and supervisory notes available to GRA and the Ministry of Finance corroborate these statements. There was also the allegation that what SML was doing was a duplication of what some state agencies were already doing. They said no, SML's work complements rather than duplicates existing state functions. They go on to explain. They also go on to explain their technical capacity and how they've been able to, their equipment was certified, and they speak to their credibility and their capacity to do the work. There was one allegation that had to do with the fact that this West Blue company that was doing the work, their contract was terminated for SML to take over.
Yes.
They contend that to say that no, it had no involvement whatsoever in the initiation, management, or termination of the West Blue's contract with GRA. In fact, they say after West Blue, there was Ghana Links ICUMS and not SML that succeeded the West Blue system, and that this is a verifiable fact. So, Martin, essentially, these are things they are talking. And finally, maybe it was the allegation about change of name from SMEL to SML. They explain that they reject the OSP's insinuation of subterfuge and clarifies that the change of the company's name from Strategic Mobilization Enhancement Limited, SMEL, to SML was a legitimate corporate decision undertaken solely for branding clarity and marketing simplicity, fully compliant with legal business registration procedures and without any intent to conceal identity or mislead the public. So in essence, these are the matters that SML has been responding to, clearly saying that they have done no wrong and that the allegations that were leveled against them by the OSP may not exactly be accurate. But we are learning that on the instruction of the president, that the existing contracts that SML still has with the government of Ghana, that is through the Ghana Revenue Authority, should be terminated forthwith.
Okay. Dennis, thank you so much for walking us through the responses from SML. And clearly, it's also quite interesting that right after the OSP's public address, the government of Ghana, through the president, reacted, and now SML has also shared their side of the story. Let's now engage private legal practitioner Martin Pebu, who's joined us for a brief conversation on this. Mr. Pebu, thank you so much for your time. You clearly have followed. Yesterday, I heard you on Ghana Tonight, sharing wider perspectives and legal angles to how all of this has played out. Today, as we speak, the president acted. He is asking that all contracts be terminated, all contracts with SML. And then SML actually reacted before the president's letter came out, where they are saying that all the issues raised by the OSP do not hold water, and that they have been dealing with the country through the right legal processes. What do you make of how all of this is playing out, the final twists to all of this tale?
Yeah, the decision by the president is spot on. This is what Akufo-Addo should have done a long time ago. But because SML was being sponsored, being promoted, etc. by Opuriata, and I'm not the one saying it, the OSP report says it. So it means that once Opuriata was benefiting, Akufo-Addo was benefiting. So Akufo-Addo had no interest in cancelling the contracts. That's the whole thing. If you read the OSP report, it says that Opuriata kept promoting, and making false statements to other institutions that SML is good at this, SML is good at that, has a track record in this, the various transactions. I'm talking about the audit verification transactions, external price, verification, all the other things. once Oforiatta was saying those things, he was saying those to his benefit. And once Oforiatta was benefiting, that's Akufo-Addo benefiting. And so it's easy to understand why Akufo-Addo didn't cancel the contract. So we are grateful to President Mahama for doing that. We just hope that eventually these investigations will lead to how Akufo-Addo himself also benefited directly. Because now that Oforiatta is in the loop, he's been shown that he was the promoter-in-chief, etc. Automatically, we should be headed to Akufo-Addo because Akufo-Addo will not let this continue if he wasn't benefiting. And Martin, look, one thing we should be saying that the report was clear. And even before the report, let's go with the video. Pictorial evidence. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. You watch the documentary. Christian Soti is asked, do you do audit verification, all those things? They said, no, we don't do that. You watch playback. It's not like somebody, he says, she says. You see Christian Soti, an interview he was informed about weeks, if not months, that it was arranged. So he knew that it was Manasseh coming. And so if you know that Manasseh is coming to interview on such a matter, you better be prepared. Yet when they asked him, does the company do these things? He said no. Have you saved government of Ghana billions of money? He says no. So what were we waiting for again? And the Akufo-Addo, what were we waiting for again? You just played the video. So it just showed you how the Akufo-Addo's administration was just, milking the public purse illegally, just taking our money, or that they chop up nyafu. The man says so to the camera. Do you do this business? He said, no, we are not into that business.
Right.
And yet they were being paid. You read the report, then it shows you how Oforiatta wrote that controller should pay. And they kept paying, even when SML had not presented any reports on work done.
Right.
The contract says before SML is paid, they should present a report on the work done for verification, etc., and present invoices. Same was not done. And yet, because Oforiatta said they should pay, they kept paying. You see, and Oforiatta kept promoting SML through false statements. Oh, they have expertise in this. This auditing, that's
and counsel,
auditing the transaction.
So, sorry for cutting, but clearly it tells you that at least, if not for anything at all, the revelations by the Special Prosecutor actually buttresses earlier things like you are saying we should have known about, and the previous administration should have acted much earlier. The current administration's termination order, do you think it should just be like that? We should leave it that way, or beyond the termination, more should be done, as in like to reclaim? Okay, so were you expecting, for instance, the letter from the Office of the President to also ask that investigations and recuperations be done, or we should just wait? As the OSP has said, he's already given us how much he's going to expect the courts to get from SML, so we should leave it at that.
Great, yes. So the second one, the report says that OSP says he's going after the money, right? I see one of the items was about 129 million, etc., right?
Yes.
So once OSP has already written those in the report, it's okay, because OSP is a government institution. And also, remember, for us in civil society, we sued SML and GRA, etc., over that 1.4 billion last year. But because of Oforiatta has fled, it's making service impossible, so it has stalled the case. So even civil society organizations, you see CED, Ben Boatis, ATEP, African Center for Energy Policy, the Fourth Estate itself, and some other lawyers, Enyuna Mabuchi, etc., joined in, and we sued about a year ago. So that one too will be ongoing. So definitely, we are looking to recover the monies that were have been lost to the state.
Okay. Mr. Kpebu, thank you so much. I would have to leave it here for now. We're grateful for your time.
You're welcome.
Martin Kpebu is a private legal practitioner and has also, been one of the key advocates and individuals who've been asking that the state earlier, much earlier, should have started looking at the contractual agreements between the Ghana Revenue Authority and the Strategic Mobilization Limited, SML. That was even in the middle part of 2024, probably even earlier. But cut a long story short, the Special Prosecutor yesterday addressed the nation and said that almost all contracts between SML and the Ghana Revenue Authority were questionable, didn't go through the right legal processes. And as we speak, the Office of the President or the President of the Republic has also waded into it and said that all existing contracts should be terminated forthwith, and clearly gives a backing to what the OSP has found out. And it's also interesting to note that the OSP himself says that he is taking the matter to court, and in the coming days we should be hearing how all of this will be playing out, because there is an amount of 125 million Ghana cedis expected to be recovered from the SML. So we will definitely be updating you or carry you along as all of this unfolds right before our very eyes. You're still listening to 3FM 92.7. This is Hot Edition. We are going on to some other stories this evening having to do with developments in Parliament, because the Lands and Natural Resources Minister, Emmanuel Amakufibua, has laid a new legislative instrument in Parliament to effectively repeal L.I.2462, which allowed mining in forest reserves. The government has made a strong commitment to revoking L.I.2462 due to significant public outcry and the desire to strengthen environmental protection against illegal mining. Many of you know it as Galamsey. The new legislation is expected to include a specific clause and a schedule listing all protected forest reserves where mining is prohibited. Let's listen to what the minister said a few minutes ago, just when he laid it in Parliament, and then we'll speak to our correspondent who's been following this for us from the House.
Speaker, you recall L.I.2462, which was enacted November 2022 to ensure that environmental management principles are legally enforced in mining operations in forest reserves. Public outcry led to an amendment of that LI by deleting Regulation 3.2 to effectively limiting the President's power. The new LI 2504 was entered into force June 2nd, 2025. However, in the light of current circumstances, it has become expedient to revoke LI 2501, and going forward, exploration and mining operations in forest reserve by legalized large-scale mining will be undertaken using guidelines reviewed in 2022 until a new LI is considered. I thank you.
So that is Emmanuel Amakufibua, the minister in charge of Ghana's lands and natural resources. Let's speak to Christian Yali, our correspondent in Parliament. He's joined us now. Christian, thank you for your time. So what exactly does laying this bill in Parliament mean?
Martin, what laying this bill technically means is that after 21 certain days, when it matures and the House approves of it, the President technically would lose all his power to grant or to issue mining permits in forest reserves. Now, that is contained in Regulation 3.2 of LI 2462. Earlier this year, the Minister for Environment, Science and Technology laid a new instrument, what you would call an amendment, to amend the first law, which is the LI 2462, to, restrict or take that power from the President, so that the President is unable to grant, mining permits or grant any companies permits to mine in forest reserves or any other biodiversity area. Now, that received some backlash from the public, because then the NDC, prior to the election, had made that promise that once they come into office, they are going to completely strip off that whole law, which is LI 2462. So many had raised the point that bringing an amendment to more or less seek to restrict the power of the President, what's a no. It's either you take it or you do nothing about it. What you say, all or nothing. Now today, what the minister has done is that he has led this new instrument, and I want to give you the actual name of the new instrument. The new instrument, the full name of it is Environmental Protection Mining in Forest Reserve Revocation Instrument. So now you have revocation instrument, which means that it is still L.I.2462, which has now been amended the second time, but this time around, a revocation instrument to ensure that all of that law is over. And so once it matures, the presidency, any president at all, do not have or does not have that power of, enforcing or allowing mining to happen in any biodiversity area or in forest reserve. That is the summary of all of this action, Martin.
Right. And it's quite interesting that, earlier they tried amending it, and like you're indicating, it had its own backlash where people say, you promised to take it out. How come you are just going to more or less review what is there? So you also told us that this will take 21 days. Within that period, what is expected to be happening?
Within the 21 certain days, nothing will happen. It means that the status quo would remain until the 21 certain days. It means that from today, so the counting begins from this Friday, and then next week, the session would resume on Tuesday. So from Tuesday, that will be the second day, and it continues as 21 days would reach. Then it will take effect from there. So right from that moment, it means L.I.2462 would have been revoked entirely. Right now, it is the first step to it. So within this period that the counting would begin, the status quo would remain, which means that, on a lighter note, the president could still that I'm going to grant a mining company a lease or a permit to go to mine in any forest reserve, because the new law wouldn't have taken effect. But once the 21 certain day counting had reached, it means that L.I.2462 and then even the amendment 2501, which took place earlier this year, all of them would have been dealt with, all of them would have been revoked, and now we wouldn't even have anything to talk about concerning mining in forest reserves, to even talk about a president having the power to want to even issue mining permits.
But finally and briefly, do we know who then now has that authorization to even give a mining permit, not in forest reserves, of course, because that is out, but then the regular mining in concessions? Who has that authority? Is that the minister, or is it captured in the new LI, the one that has been laid?
The new LI does not capture that, but what we know, and as it were, there are laws that regulate mining in the country, and so all things being equal, it just means that those laws are what will take charge or what would be effectively used by the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. And Martin, you know that this particular LI is even coming from the Ministry of Environment, and you know that Emmanuel Amakofibua is now the acting minister after the death of the substantive minister, Dr. Ibrahim Murtala Mohammed.
Yes.
And so he even laid it in his capacity as the acting minister for environment. So these two ministries, Ministries of Environment and Lands and Natural Resources, are the ones that will take charge of all mining regulations, as well as the Lands Commission and the related agencies.
Christian Yali, thank you so much for the report from Parliament. He's our correspondent and updating us on the new LI that has been laid in Parliament, asking that 2462 be absolutely taken out or terminated, taken out of Parliament, or there is a revocation of LI 2462. So what are your thoughts on it? One key individual who has also been quite, active in calling for a proper attention to mining laws in the country is Daryl Bosu. He's also the Deputy National Director for Arocha Ghana. He's joined us for a quick chat. Mr. Bosu, good evening. Thank you for your time.
Good evening to you as well, my brother. I believe you are fine.
Very well, I am. How does this come to you that, after a lot of public pressure, government through the Ministry of Environment has decided to now lay one that will revoke completely LI 2462?
Yes, thank you very much for that. I think today is a very good day, and should put a lot of smart of us who have been looking forward to the government or the state taking steps to protect and give some level of security to our forest reserves. As you know, the passage of L.I.2462 back in 2022 was one of the most retrogressive steps in looking at the way we have been managing our forest reserves over the past 2 decades. So eventually, the government eventually taking steps to now revoke such a retrogressive LI legal instrument. It for us a good step, very progressive, and I want to really commend the government for really keeping to their word, doing what they said they want to do. But I need to really make this cautious statement that, look, the LI will be revoked, but still government will need to ensure that the necessary compliance and enforcement regimes are in place to guarantee absolute security for our forests. So this is a very good step, and we are really excited that it's coming in. Not today, and we are very happy to commend the government for taking this bold step.
Right, and on the back of that, the question would still remain that if, for instance, there is the certainty that prospecting has been done, there is a huge deposit of mineral resources in some forest area, would you agree, or would you suggest, for instance, or consider that maybe there should be a legal way of mining it, although this is still in the forest reserve? How do we go about it when such a discovery is made?
So, my brother, I think what we also need to understand that the law that establishes forest reserve was very explicit in indicating which activities are compatible and which are not. And if we are mindful of the purposes for which the forest reserve was set up, it's also for the benefit of the state, for the benefit of the public, and also for the benefit of citizens. So in that respect, the state then needs to go through the appropriate channels, as it is, in this case, deforested, or what we call declassifying the forest reserve before any such activity can happen. And so I believe that the state will now be more mindful when it comes to exploring such opportunities when it comes. And I think that this should rather set in motion a long-term process as a country for all of us to start really put in place a strategy for making sure that we protect our forests. They are also there for a particular purpose. The sources of our water, also guaranteeing well-being and welfare, especially emissions reductions and made amelioration benefits. We really also need to take steps, because if you look at the costs involved in sustaining the economy as a result of clean air and also making sure that the environment is conducive, it will equal to some of the benefits that we're getting from mining some of these areas. So I believe that as a country, we need to do a natural capital valuation, know the true value of our natural resources and forest reserves before we even think about going ahead to do some of these things. And I expect the government to make sure that they do the right thing, the law, going on into the future.
Right, and my final question would be that it looks as though the attention largely has been on forest reserves. Very little, or there is the concentration of what's happening in our forest reserves. But water is life, and is it your assumption, or should it be our assumption, that because there's a specific order protecting our forest reserves, it by extension is going to cover the water, our rivers as well, because that's where we can see clear devastation when it comes to the water bodies?
I agree with you. I agree with you, and it's not that nobody cares about our water bodies. As you know, we have the buffer zone policy, which sets boundaries for how far you can get to or operate within certain rivers and streams in this country. It's a policy, so we have not seen a very effective implementation of that. The core has also been that government should look at effecting, making sure these laws are much more stringent, really converting some of these policy documents into law, so that we ensure absolute compliance and enforcement. And that is where I think that we need to be paying attention to. So it's not that nobody has been talking about it. We've been talking about these issues as well. But the question is the government listening? And I believe that with this out of the way, the Water Resource Commission, together with other stakeholders, and I know already the Water Resource Commission has taken the lead in moving for the buffer zone policy to be translated into a law. So we are looking forward to that as well. And I believe that this government will show leadership and make sure our water bodies also receive similar protection going on to the future.
Mr. Bosu, thank you so much. And my takeaway from your submission is enforcement. Thank you for speaking to us.
It was a pleasure. Thank you as well. Thank you.
Right. Darrell Bosu is Deputy National Director at Arusha, Ghana, and clearly is in support of the new directive or the new act by government where a new LI has been laid in Parliament for the revocation of 2462, which prior to its laying reversed what was a ban on mining in forest reserves. So L.I.2462 actually now permitted people to go ahead and mine in forest reserves. But the action that has been taken today by the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, acting as Minister in charge of Environment, clearly will now ban the mining in forest reserves. So in the coming days, 21 days is just a few days away. We'll see what kind of debate this will generate in Parliament, and clearly you are hoping that it will be a bipartisan understanding that our forest reserves need to remain as forest reserves, and water bodies also in the coming days will see what action will be taken in that regard. This is still 3FM 92.7. You're listening to Hot Edition. I am Martin Asiedu-Dartey. Let's stay in Parliament because the minority in the House is demanding clarity on the source of funding for the operations of the Ghana Gold Board. The caucus says although the government previously announced an allocation of $279 million to kickstart the board's activities, a right to information request reveals that the Ministry of Finance has not made any financial release to the board since its establishment. This, they argue, raises questions about how the institution is currently being financed. Addressing journalists in Parliament, the chairperson of the Subsidiary Legislative Committee, Patrick Boama, called on the government to provide full disclosure on the matter.
If you go to the Gold Board's website right now, you will not find anything as contained in the Act. The Gold Board came into being in April. And if April, May, June, July, August, we've gone way past a quarter. So that all this information ought to be there. We hear of Gold Board appointing brand ambassadors, delivering or supplying pickups to institutions and what have you. But what the law requires them to do under Section 42 hasn't been complied with. And it is very, very dangerous, especially where the World Bank, the European Union, and other institutions are talking about where Ghana is headed to, especially in the fight against galamsey. Especially also in the Gold Board's own act, which talks about sourcing and traceability. Where is the Gold Board getting all those gold from? Is it from responsible mining? Is it from small-scale miners? Or is it from galamsey sites?
The group is also calling for the detailed publication of the board's activities on its official website as required by law to facilitate transparency and ensure traceability regarding the source of its gold.
So finally, I got a letter from the Ministry of Finance dated the 29th of October. 29th of October is just 2 days ago. And the letter was signed by the Chief Director of the Ministry. And the Ministry said in simple terms, I'll give you copies, I'll forward it to you, that the Ministry has not received, has not transferred or made any allocation to the Gold Board. So now question now is, how is the Gold Board being funded? That is very, very important. Is it from the central bank? Is the Bank of Ghana printing money to fund the Gold Board? Why must the Bank of Ghana be doing that? Those are questions that I'll leave to you as journalists to unravel.
And you heard the voice of Patrick Boama, who is a member of Parliament and also ranking on the Legislative Subsidiary Committee in Parliament, bringing a segment to an end. Time now, though, for the latest in the world of business.
Hello, good evening and welcome to the business segment on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7 with me, Bismarck. Also coming up tonight, aggrieved NDK finance customers cry foul over locked up funds years after financial sector cleanup. Call on Bank of Ghana, Finance Ministry to intervene. This story and others lined up for you, please stay. Thanks for your company. Now to the details. Some aggrieved customers of NDK Finance are demanding the release of their locked-up funds several years after the government's financial sector cleanup exercise. The affected investors say, despite repeated assurances from the company, they are yet to receive their full deposits, leaving many in financial distress. The following 3 Business News Desk report has the details. It's been several years since Ghana's financial sector cleanup. Yet some customers of NDK Finance say their investments remain locked up. The aggrieved investors tell 3 Business that despite assurances from the company, they have not received the full amounts owed them. One customer, Mr. Buabasa, lamented that although part of his investment has been refunded, a significant portion remains unpaid, leaving him stranded and financially burdened. Another customer, who preferred to remain anonymous, said the delay has made it difficult to cater for her children's education and basic needs. The affected customers accuse NDK Finance of poor communication and inaction, despite several attempts to seek updates. When contacted, authorities at NDK Finance attributed the delay to unresolved issues with the Bank of Ghana following the sector cleanup. The investors are now calling on the Central Bank and the Ministry of Finance to intervene and ensure the release of their funds. And that was a 3 Business News Desk report. Moving on, government statistician Dr. Asiedu-Dartey says Ghanaians and non-Ghanaians who traveled outside the country in 2023 spent an estimated 3.4 billion cedis on outbound trips. He explained that the latest domestic and outbound tourism survey by the Ghana Statistical Service shows more than 90% of these travels were self-arranged, underscoring the growing preference for independent travel over packaged tours. Visits to friends and relatives was the topmost reason for overnight visits in 2023, recording the largest share in each quarter at 40.6%. This was followed by sporting activities, business and professional travels, and funerals in that order.
The Ashanti region consistently recorded the highest number of same-day travelers across all the quarters, ranging between 3,000 and 5,000 trips. The Greater Accra region led by a wide margin throughout all 4 quarters, with about 30,000 and 50,000 overnight trips. Government can ensure that we put in place policies to retain a significant proportion of this 4 billion Ghana cedis. We can do that by investing in transport, investing in our airports and hospitality infrastructure so that we can keep more of the 4 billion Ghana cedis in circulation in our own economy. Another thing that can be done is to provide tax incentives to encourage tour agencies to design outbound packages that incorporate Ghanaian services and products.
And that was government statistician Dr. Asiedu-Dartey. Before we go, the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research, ISE, has affirmed that government's fiscal consolidation drive remains on track but expressed concern over the country's rising debt levels and limited investment in capital projects that drive long-term growth. According to the Institute's State of the Ghanaian Economy Report 2024, Ghana's public debt rose from 43.9% of GDP in 2013 to around 72% in 2023, before rising or easing to 61.8% by end 2024, reflecting partial debt relief under the ongoing restructuring program. Despite the reduction in debt, Isse noted that capital expenditure remains alarmingly low. Capital spending increased marginally by 0.1 percentage points to 2.5% of GDP in 2024 compared to 2.4% in 2023, a sharp fall from 6.9% of GDP recorded in 2010. The country's debt to GDP ratio stood at 48% as of June 2025. And that brings us to the end of Hot Edition. For more news, please log on to our website 3news.com. I am Bismarck Elsa. Thanks for your company.